Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. Please like and subscribe. Become a member to the channel. I leave that donation for that fried rice and chicken wings. Sebastian Fundora is on a roll. 6'6", I like to say 6'12". Man got an 80+ inch reach. Really becoming comfortable with his size, with his reach. In my opinion, Sebastian Fundora can go on the rest of his career and never lose a fight. If he uses the natural advantage that God blessed him with. Man has the ability to walk around 6'12" and make the 154-pound limit with an 80+ inch reach advantage. There's no reason for this guy to ever lose a fight. Mute this shit. He should never, ever lose a fight. But his heart is his biggest downfall. So when analyzing Sebastian Fundora, can he beat Keith Thurman? I think he can. But the first thing, again, that jumps out is just the advantage he has over Keith Thurman. You know, how is Keith Thurman going to get around that? You know, Fundora doesn't just stand taller than him. He stands taller than everybody. But when it comes to Keith Thurman, I mean, he towers over him. Keith Thurman is 5'9" with a 69-inch reach. There's an 11-inch reach advantage for Fundora. So believe he's going to take all 11 of those inches and push it all up in Keith Thurman's mouth. You're giving up a foot in height, a foot in reach. That's not a small gap, all right? That's a massive, massive, massive gap. Now, if Fundora stays disciplined and uses that jab that I've been talking about, with that pterodactyl-like wingspan that he has and shit, he can control the pace of the fight and keep Thurman stuck on the outside. The jab isn't, you know, for Fundora, man, his jab isn't just a range finder either, man. It's you know, becoming a weapon that can set up uppercuts, hooks, and even body work from a distance, and Thurman just can't reach him. The problem is Fundora is not that fast, not that coordinated, and if he tries to do those things, Keith Thurman may counter him. But the story is, he may be able to do it. You got to understand, Keith Thurman has been inactive. And Fundora has been active, very active, out here doing the business. You saw Fundora, man. The fight that really stands out to everybody is just what he's done, what he did to Tim Tszyu. You know what I'm saying? And the fights went back and forth, but even in fights, not only the Tim Tszyu fight, Fundora, where he's taking punishment, he's shown that he throws punches and bunches and he drowns opponents in volume. And the thing is, they can't figure out the reach. The only time they have opportunities to land on Fundora is when Fundora gives them the opportunities, because there are times when Fundora will take it to the stupid and fight like he's Pitbull Cruz and shit. So if he does that with Thurman, it could be, you know, shit can be brutal for Fundora. But Thurman, especially late in his career, has been known to throw single shots and then move, relying on burst of speed. I don't know if that's going to be enough against Fundora, who, again, although he'll make himself small at some point in the fight, which can give Thurman an opportunity to land the single power shots that he's been throwing lately. But at the end of the day, if that's what Keith Thurman's trying to do and Fundora stays tall and long, I don't see how Thurman's going to get in there. You know what I'm saying? And against Fundora, that rhythm that Keith Thurman likes, that might not be enough. You know, when you have a fighter, especially with an 11-inch reach advantage and pushing all 11 inches all up in your mouth, Fundora's high output can overwhelm him. And I just think when it comes to Thurman's defensive reactions, it may not be that the way we were hoping to see, because Keith Thurman, look, he's not the same Keith Thurman who fought Sean Porter and Danny Garcia. Now all of a sudden Keith Thurman is on the back foot. eventually pushed it into survival mode because Fundora is just coming at him. You know what I'm saying? So activity means pressure, and pressure breaks fighters down, especially ones who aren't used to dealing with that kind of constant fire. And a guy like Keith Thurman with the inactivity, although he has all the experience in the world, you got Fundora, the fireman, coming out here, and he looking to scorch Keith Thurman. So we're going to see if Keith Thurman going to be able to hold him out. Because, again, for me, when somebody's trying to put 11 inches all up in your mouth, that's going to be tough for Keith Thurman to figure out. Now, as far as power, Keith Thurman got power, but Sebastian Fundora got some power too. Now, I'm not just saying that. I'm going, when Madrimov, it was two people who sparred Fundora, and they said that man looked simple. I remember Fundora specifically, he said, you look at him and you think you can punch him and break him, punch him and fold him. It said until you get in there with him and you're like, yo, this joker hits hard and he's strong. So when it comes to power, it plays a role in this breakdown, man. Fundora, he's awkward and he got this lanky frame, but it allows him to generate leverage in unusual ways. You saw that when he fought Lubin. Who would have thought Fundora would have beat Lubin? But those uppercuts in particular have been fight-changing weapons. And again, taking a guy like Erickson, man, who was broken down by Fundora's relentless power shots. While Thurman has shown a great chin in the past, he's also been visibly hurt by body shots, especially when he fought Pacquiao and Luis Collazo. Fundora, with his ability to punch downward into the body and still connect clean to the head, he has all the tools to exploit that weakness on Keith Thurman. If he mixes his shots to Thurman's midsection early and often, he could sap one-time speed and explosiveness before the middle rounds. But when I think about Fundora going to Thurman's body, I think about him getting countered. But I also have to understand, if Fundora's staying tall and he's shooting the stab jab to the body from the outside, Keith Thurman's not going to be able to counter him. If he times him, he could have some success, but again, you're talking about 11 inches, all up in your mouth. So I don't know. I'd have to wait and see how Keith Thurman does it, if he can even do it. But over the years, while Keith Thurman was out there, tending to family and whatever else he was doing, Fundora's been inside the ring maturing and doing the business. Early in his career, he looked like a giant who didn't know quite how to use his gifts. He was just big, tall and long. Fighting too much on the inside, man. He still does that shit. You can see he's trying to break out of it, but that's just how he's wired. That's just Fundora, you know what I mean? He's a guy who was taking unnecessary risks. His risks now are a bit more calculated, but to me, that's still unnecessary. If you can win a fight with your jab alone, win the goddamn fight. Go down in history as a guy who won every fight with just his jab. I think that's more laudable than you coming in fights, giving a massive crash up when you don't have to, and ending up your career with some losses on your record that you shouldn't have lost because you gave fighters opportunities. You know what I'm saying? So, bottom line is, I think with each fight, Fundora is realizing these guys I'm getting in the ring with, 9 times out of 10 are going to be smaller than me, and I shouldn't allow them to touch me. And with each fight, he's become more comfortable with who he is as a fighter, learning to use a jab, really, really trying to pace himself and show patience and allowing his physical gifts to shine. And I think that maturity, that patience is critical in facing a veteran like Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman is all about, he thrives on creating mistakes. Keith Thurman thrives on creating mistakes in his opponents and countering them. Now, a more patient, focused Fundora is a nightmare for somebody like Keith Thurman. You know what I'm saying? Now, that leads into his growing comfort size. I think that leads with his growing comfort with his size and reach. You got to wake up and be okay with who and what you are. And his physical dimensions, I think he's finally seeing it as a blessing. But maybe before he didn't see those physical dimensions that he possesses as a weapon, maybe he didn't know how to weaponize that shit. Maybe he came up and the way he was trained by I think it's his father. It wasn't for him to be tall and fight smart. It was just, you're a Mexican, fight with the Mexican heart. Let your nuts hang, Fundora. And Fundora's like, your dad, that's a long way down if I let these balls hang, you know what I'm saying? Kind of cold down there. But that don't have nothing to do with what I'm talking about, man. In recent fights, you've seen him embrace the jab more consistently, fight tall when necessary, using angles, maximizing his leverage. I mean, you can just look at his last couple fights. He fought Tim Tszyu, and he fought somebody before that. Then he fought Tim Tszyu. Then he had the first Tim Tszyu fight. You can just see, like, it's becoming more and more difficult for these fighters to try to figure out Fundora, you know what I mean? Like, it's really becoming difficult for them to figure him out. But I'll say this, the way he's been using angles and maximizing his leverage, if he applies that same discipline against Keith Thurman, it becomes a fight dictated entirely on his terms. I know Keith Thurman, the lateral movement, darting in and out. Keith Thurman, you know, what he was. We're talking about what he is now. I don't know if there's going to be enough for him to do the business, but one thing I will say, Thurman cannot close the distance easily. It's not going to be easy to do it. And if he tries recklessly, he's walking straight into uppercuts and straight lefts that could end his night. You got to understand, a guy like Keith Thurman, Fundora is not going to run away from a mashup crasher with Keith Thurman. Fundora is a guy is particularly dangerous because of his willingness to take risks. He is okay with taking a few shots to get his off. I'm not saying it's smart, but it makes him particularly dangerous. You know what I'm saying? And in the past, it's gotten him in trouble. But this is the thing, you know, that's not a bad thing necessarily because it makes him unpredictable. And fighters know that this guy is not just unpredictable, he's relentless. He doesn't care. He's willing to jump in the river butt naked with man-eating crocodiles, swim across, stop in the middle, splash water, antagonize the crocodile, and then swim his ass to the other side. Like, yo, Fundora is about that life. But what I will say is, you know, you got some tall fighters out there, they ain't like Fundora. A lot of them at the heavyweight division, they ain't willing to take the risk Fundora is willing to take. They're too cautious. Fundora, man, you know, he don't mind exchanging. You know, I don't know if this is good for him or not, but more often than not, he willing to get into that firefight, man. But he showed he got a chin, he's got a toughness, man, that's carried him through moments. There's a certain toughness about Fundora, whether you want to admit it or not. This man keeps winning, right? There's something about Fundora. But against Thurman, that willingness to go to war, it could either backfire on Fundora, but it could break Thurman's rhythm and confidence. And then Fundora, again, putting all 11 inches in Thurman's mouth. But if Fundora can survive Thurman's best counters and still keep coming forward, Thurman may realize he has no way to keep the bigger man off him. And it's just going to be kind of frustrating to watch Keith Thurman go up in flames, which is what I expect is going to happen. If he can't keep Fundora off him, if he can't avoid the jab, if he can't slip and dart inside and land hard shots, then it's going to be all bad for Keith Thurman. So I think when you look at the fact that Fundora has so many advantages, the bigger picture here is whether Fundora fits into the welterweight and super welterweight landscape. You know what I'm saying? Is he hurting himself by staying at 154? Now, if he gets past Thurman, it opens the door for conversation about whether he's the man to potentially beat Jerome Boots Ennis or Terence Crawford. That's a serious conversation, you know what I'm saying? Fundora may be the guy who beats Boots. He may be the guy to beat Crawford, you know what I mean? Hey, look, Bob Marley, I ain't shoot the sheriff, so don't shoot me for that statement I just made. I just got to keep it all the way real with you, man. If Fundora stays behind his jab, improves his footwork, step back, step out on angles at the same time, man, work on his timing, his skill level, sharpen up his skill level, man, he would have a really good chance. I know some people don't want to hear that shit. You just gotta look at the size of him. That makes for Fundora makes for a difficult fight against anybody. While both Ennis and Crawford are far more skilled and versatile than Thurman at this stage, again, Fundora's size and output create unique challenges that neither has consistently faced. Fundora is just an alien, man. I call him Cockroach Man. The dude is just a freak. But I don't know. Could a disciplined, jab-heavy, body-punching Fundora test the great Crawford? Could Fundora really test Terence Crawford? Could his volume and size neutralize even the slickness of a Jaron Ennis? I mean, those are questions that would suddenly feel more realistic if he gets in there and not just dominates Thurman, but blasts him out the ring. You better believe that. They're going to be talking about Fundora. They should be talking about it already. Fundora and Crawford, or Fundora and Ennis. They should be talking about it. You know what I'm saying? But one thing for sure, we can't forget Fundora's ceiling across multiple weight divisions. The man's 6'12". Taller than many light heavyweights. Taller than a lot of heavyweights. If he continues to fill out his frame properly, you know what I'm saying? It's not crazy to imagine him competing at middleweight, super middleweight, or even light heavyweight later in his career. But I'd have to wonder about that durability. But one thing for sure, he has durability. But, you know, them heavyweights, I don't know. But I'll say his durability and stamina suggests he could carry his style up in weight. How far, I don't know, but I know his frame is built for it. So in that sense, Fundora has a unique chance to carve out a historic path, possibly becoming a multi-division champion in a way we've rarely seen from fighters who started at 154. You know, I don't know. But more people need to be paying attention to Sebastian Fundora, because I think there's a good chance he puts his name on the map. If you ask me who you're going for, in this video, I'm going for Fundora. I'm talking about how he's going to win. You already know who I'm going for, but you know, I'm stirring the pot. Anyway, I'll say this. What makes this breakdown compelling is that Fundora is still so young. He's injury-free, unlike Thurman. Flaws are being ignored and by his team now because his flaws have been ironed out. They're like, ain't no need to focus on the flaws no more. We've ironed them out. And a couple little loose ends, we're tightening that up. So that's what you want to hear, you know what I'm saying? Fight by fight, training camp by training camp. They're getting Fundora, man, fine-tuned. And I just tell you, man, his ceiling remains very high. Very high. No pun intended. So against Thurman, look, he has the perfect opportunity to showcase that evolution. You know, Fundora has an opportunity to show everyone what he's done, what he's worked on, and where he's at now. If he uses his size and reach, stays active, applies power to the body, remains patient, stops fighting all compartmentalized like Isaac Pitbull Cruz, and takes risks, but embraces smart risks. You know, he can not only beat Thurman, but do so in a way that redefines how people see him. I'm telling you, they're going to be talking about Fundora and Crawford, or Fundora and Boots. You watch. Anyway, I think right now he's kind of labeled like a curiosity because of his frame. But I'll tell you what, Fundora has a chance to transform into a legitimate, feared contender and possibly the future man to test the Crawfords, the Ennises, and go up in weight and probably do like Crawford and become undisputed across multiple weight divisions. But that's still getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. But anyway, put some respect on Fundora's name. He says Keith Thurman is next. And Keith Thurman's is. He is. But is Fundora, has he evolved himself to the point to where he can really get in the ring with Keith Thurman and defeat Keith Thurman? I don't know. But we're going to find out. Y'all keep cool. Shout out to the veterans all 7 continents. Time to go put in this road work with the magic vest. In the breeze.